Detective Comics 1039. This is Mariko Tamaki writing with Victor Bogdanovich on the art, continuing this story. We get a lot of the backstory of our villain in this issue. This is kind of our
I am
origin story.
very glad that our characters reference the fact that Hugh Vile is a villain name.
Yes,
it really is.
No, it absolutely is. That first page is glorious, by the way, with the green glow and the black background, with these like parasite mouth open. It's all very good. So obviously they saved the reporter from the explosion. That was kind of our typical cliffhanger in the last issue.
Yeah, and then find out she's already infected.
Yes. Yeah, that comes up in a second when she, goes after them. But we see like the Batgirls are helping people because this explosion caused a lot of damage. Nightwing saving people. The gangster man, whose name I always forget. He's, Worth. There you go. Watching intently, but we come to, the backstory of our Vile, our Hugh Vile character, and he had this happen to him as a kid. He became infected, and he's sensitive to light, so that's going to be very important. That's a mechanic going forward that they can use to fight. But basically, it gave him this hunger. The thing inside him wanted to feed on fear, feed on death, feed on that kind of thing. He was always ravenous, but never wanted to eat actual food. Doctors tried to help him, but he discovered when he killed a random guy in a hospital that this was, or not even kill. Sorry, he infected. He made him go and kill someone, which is obviously what he's been doing. Throughout the story. So all really interesting. Yeah, the reporter lady tries to kill Batman, shanks him in the stomach.
A big shard of glass.
Worth was there with a gun, so he's like there. So there's a fight with Batman still going on with the flames behind him. There's a bunch of goons that he's hired, like ex-Penguin goons and ex-Bane goon. The whole entourage.
He's been on the app.
He's been on the app, yes, on the goon app. So Huntress ties up reporter lady, or just kill him.
Donovan.
Yeah, and talks to Oracle. What's going on? That's what the villain name joke is, and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean, all of this is just continuing the chaos of what's happening. But she goes after Vile. She sees Vile standing there. She goes and confronts him, and he's very smug. He's like, "You're going to take me in now?" He puts his hands out, and of course he lets the parasite come out, and it's a really good panel actually. They're in silhouette except the green parasite is green,
orange red glow behind them.
Yeah, from the fire. Yeah, the only thing other than the green glow is like his lens from his glasses is still visible. So it's a really effective artistic beat, but yeah. So Huntress has this in her now, and it kind of looks like he's passed it on as well, right? Like she's got the full.
Yeah, I got the impression that's how it works a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. It transfers over to the thing where it spreads. Yeah. And another little one to them.
Yeah, because she's got full on green tentacle things coming out of her mouth at this point.
Yeah.
And obviously Batman and Worth are just fighting. There's a cement mixer truck there, so he ends up covered in that. It's a whole fun thing. But sure enough, she starts firing arrows from her crossbow at Batman, and it becomes this fight between them. So it's a very action heavy issue. There's actually less plot to talk about, despite the fact that there's obviously the backstory stuff, because it's a lot of action. But the art is very good throughout all the action.
Bogdanovich, we tend to like anyway. But I think it's safe to say action is where he excels. Yeah, and Huntress has a good moment here because she is able to sort of mouth the word light to Batman, and he flashes her with light, which is enough to kind of get her out of the predicament. So things calm down. Hugh Vile goes underground, seemingly with one of the Bane mask wearing goons. But there's sort of the aftermath. Nakano wants to know what's going on. Where's Worth? What happened to my city? There's a bunch of just sort of epilogue kind of moments of Oracle filling Batman in and stuff. Huntress is in a hospital bed. They're hoping they got to it. And so it's actually kind of the end of the arc because it says finale and it's sort of leading into where this goes, which is that Bruce says he can't hunt down Worth, and hunt down Vile is both Bruce and Batman, so he's going to turn himself in. That's kind of our or cliffhanger. So he's clearly got a plan. He's got a plan where he's going to turn himself in to infiltrate and get to the bottom of this. But
It should be fun.
yeah,
There's some really nice lettering touches in this as well. Like once Huntress gets infected, she's like got the wavy speech bubbles. Just it's really subtle at first as well.
it just makes it really distinct and clear that it's not her voice. You know, it's the voice of the parasite effectively influencing her. So no, really strong stuff. It doesn't really end the story as much as it ends this act of the story, because it's clearly not over. We still have the villains at play, which is not a complaint, because I've been enjoying this story so much. I am more than happy for this to keep evolving and for this to keep going out. If anything, I wasn't ready for this to be over. So, if anything, the only surprise I had is that it technically called itself a finale, and I was like, oh, that didn't feel like a finale, but it's not also over. So
it feels like one of those books where it's the finale for the sake of having a neat point to put in a trade.
Yes,
but not really. It's just kind of one big story.
Yes, this is more of a 12-issue story as opposed to a 6-issue one, or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
I assume this is 6 issues so far. I don't really know. I'd have to go back and check what number she started on.
Yeah, no idea.
But yeah, no, good, solid fun. Classic Batman panel at the end there. Is he standing and his face is in shadows, but you can see the outfit.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the eyes. It makes him look like he's at a weird angle. But other than that, I do like it. I really like what he does with the cape.
It's basically just another angle of the pose that he has of that famous is it Hush I'm thinking of? Where he's on the Jim Lee?
Yeah, the Jim Lee on the Hush, yeah.
Yeah. It's basically just he's doing that pose, but from a different angle. We're seeing him from the front. So
yeah.
No, really fun stuff. What are you giving the main story?
I'll give it an 8, just about, I think.
Yeah, I'll give it a solid 8. It's funny because it's just an action issue, but they've kind of earned it because it's been all this great build up.
It was well done. It was fun. I haven't got much to really complain about, but it doesn't go above and beyond either, I don't think.
Yeah, and there's a lot of orange in the background and most of the fight stuff, so when it contrasts with the blue of like Oracle's location, or the page where it's just all the shadowy meetings like talking about the aftermath, like it really distinctly sticks out.
Yeah,
it feels like it's over. And this book continues to really make good use of the backups, I feel. Because
that's interesting. I did not read this backup.
Oh, really?
Because I got to it and I was like, it was more stuff about Hugh Vile.
Yes.
And I saw it wasn't Tamaki writing it like we've had on some of them. And I felt personally, I was quite satisfied with the amount of Hugh Vile I had in the main issue. Like I had just enough of like backstory and what I wanted from this issue for him. I didn't want to sully that. I didn't want to overdo it.
Well, what's funny is that, yeah, it works. It works in what you've got so far, but like it felt so natural once this got going that this was just like, okay, here's more of like what it was like for him, because in the main issue it says that he got this as a kid, right, and then he tried to live a normal life. This basically gets into like what he was like after, where he had a brother, right, and how he'd fight with his brother, his mother who was struggling to deal with him, and how he kept acting out, and how the incidents would escalate, and how he eventually made his mother, and he was still a kid at this point, basically made his mother kill his brother, right? And so she ends up, in prison. We see these papers react to this. Yeah. But it basically talks about it's effectively what this does is that it kind of explains how he's been operating. He stayed away from Gotham partly because Batman or whatever, but he actually loves Gotham because when he came back here as a young adult, he found that there was a lot of people to feed on. There was a lot of people to make do things. But it talks about how he learned very quickly that he didn't want to draw attention. If he made someone who was like an upstanding citizen suddenly murder someone, it would lead to questions. It would lead to Batman investigating it. So the backup here kind of like gets into the idea that he would target people who have anger issues already or something like that. Someone that would, this feels like the natural conclusion to this person's story. And it wouldn't, questions wouldn't be asked beyond a certain point. So it kind of gets into this. This is how he was able to get away with this for perhaps as long as he has in Gotham. And it talks about how the Joker War in A-Day kind of like changed things and escalated things and put him in this position with the mayor. That's basically it. So it's basically it does kind of unnecessarily frame it with him like kind of telling this to a guy in a diner who he infects at the end. But I just kind of felt it superfluous. I didn't really feel like it was necessary. But the actual core of it just kind of got into more detail about how he's operated, like, and get into more. It felt like it complemented what they mentioned in the main story well.
That's I think for me, I feel like I made the right choice in that I don't want to say that this is bad in any way. I'm sure you're saying it's pretty solid by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
I think I was right for myself in that I didn't want this. I had my fill. I didn't want more right now. Maybe I'll come back and read this, in another week where I want to go, okay, now I've got room for a bit more of this villain, in between issues. But right now, I was like, no, I got my fill in the main issue.
Yeah, I just, I gave it a chance because I was ready to not read the Penguin one last time, and that ended up being a really solid complement to the main story as well, because it gave you Penguin's motivations for how he acted in the main issue, so it was a nice little add-on to it. And this again felt like it fleshed out something that was there. So, yeah, I mean, I think this book has by far been the best use of the backup for me. Even when it's been different writers and it's not the main writer tackling the things, because we had the reporter issue, we had the Huntress little story because she's obviously been featured in the main book. All of these things have all added, and maybe they are all technically skippable. Like, you could understand the main story just fine without all of them, but I do think they are complementing it quite nicely.
But always is the goal. I think if one of these becomes necessary to understand something, especially if it's one not by the same creative team, then somewhere along the line they've failed in their storytelling.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. I would say though that I can see this backup explaining things that some people who like to think they're smart would point out as a plot hole. Well, what's he been doing all this time, and why is he only showing up now? Like, stupid, annoying questions like that, which aren't actually that important. We could have easily not had those answered, but it does do that in an effective little way that makes sense and kind of fleshes out the character a little bit. So,
yeah, I'm not arguing with
that. It's weird to raise these backups sometimes because I feel like I'd rather not rate this one separately because it nicely sits with the main story so much because it just continues on more of his backstory. So, I feel like on its own, would I give it an 8? No, but I feel like packaged with the book, I'm happy to give the issue an 8. Like, does that make sense?
It doesn't drag it down.
Yeah.
So if this was, hypothetically, if this was a 6, it's not dragging down your score from the 8 at all. But it's not worthy of an 8 in its own right.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but it's part of this issue. It can fit. So I'll leave it at that and just make of that what you will.